After drawing 2-2 to Brentford and having a small week-long break, Chelsea returned to Premier League action today as the South West London club take on Northerners Newcastle United in a game that could have major repercussions. Lads, lasses and the rest of the masses, welcome to the lead-in. Let's set the scene here. It's Newcastle versus Chelsea, 10th versus 11th. As I just alluded to, this game could have major implications for Chelsea and represents an opportunity to claw our way closer to European qualification. A win here could bring us to 39 points with a game in hand on all the teams above us, and that game in hand happens to be against bottom-placed Burnley, a game which we should 100% be winning. Those two wins would give us 42 points, level with Brighton in 8th place, and if we managed to get a goal difference of 5 in those two games, we'd be in a European spot, 1 point behind West Ham in 7th too. However, we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves. The team in front of us in Newcastle poses a significant threat to those aspirations, with the Magpies being notoriously hard to beat. Their form is up and down, with 2 wins, 2 draws and 1 loss, and they are coming off of the back of a comfortable 3-0 win over Wolves. They'll be looking to make it 2 wins on the spin against us, so let's take a brief look at how their team could line up for this one. Firstly, let's talk absentees. Newcastle have a fair few players out for this one, with Nick Pope, Kieran Trippier, Callum Wilson and Joel Linton all out injured, Matt Targett being a doubt for this one with a hamstring issue, Sandro Tonali still suspended, and Lewis Hall being ineligible to play against his parent club. I'll be putting Eddie Howe's side into Newcastle's standard 4-3-3 formation, but due to some defensive injuries they could possibly line up differently. First up in goal though is going to be reserve goalkeeper Slovak Martin Dubravka, filling in for the injured Nick Pope. The defence is going to be changed slightly with absentees in key positions, so starting with the right back I'll be putting in ex-Chelsea boy Tino Livramento, replacing Kieran Trippier. The two centre-backs won't change from the Wolves game, with Fabian Schär and Sven Botman retaining their place. Over on the left, Dan Burn will play at left back, though this could end up becoming more of a back three with him in left centre back. Moving into the midfield, we'll start with the deepest midfielder. You know who it's going to be. Bruno Guimaraes starts here as always. Either side of him there'll be starts for Sean Longstaff on the right, and impressive youngster Lewis Miley on the left, replacing Joe Willock. That leaves the 3 up top, and starting with the right winger I'll be keeping it the same from the previous game versus Wolves, Jacob Murphy on the right, Anthony Gordon on the left, and down the centre will of course be Alexander Isak to lead the line. As I said, just a brief overview of what I expect their team to look like. I'm not going to go into much more detail as we've played them before, but I'll touch on a few things a little bit later. Instead, let's quickly take a look at how Chelsea could line up. We have gained even more injuries going into this one, with 9 first team players out now as our woes in that department continue, but as always I'll show what I expect from Pochettino, then give my own personal lineup afterwards. I think the 3 at the back system that we played against Brentford wasn't the greatest idea, and considering we won't have Ben Chilwell, I highly doubt we use it again. So it's back to the 4-2-3-1 in this one, with a lot of changes. Starting with the goalkeeper, I'm going to be sticking with George Petrovic. I think Sanchez has a lot of catching up to do to be even considered for the number 1 spot at the moment. The back 4 is going to be heavily changed from our previous game, but Malo Gusto retains his place at right back. The centre-back duo will be changed but is familiar, with Axel Disasi starting on the right as ever, alongside the returning Thiago Silva, who replaces the injured Levi Colwill. Finally, on the left we will see a long-awaited return for Marc Cucurella, who will be taking over from Ben Chilwell, who is also injured. Moving into the midfield, we'll start with the holding roles, and this as always picks itself. Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo both remain in the middle once again, with Enzo likely being the captain for this game. Ahead of them in the attacking midfield roles, let's start on the right where I think Noni Madueke will come in to replace Conor Gallagher, who is ill and hasn't trained. This obviously means that Cole Palmer starts again, but in a central position, hopefully pulling the strings from there. Finally, over on the left I'll be putting in Raheem Sterling, who starts once more. Up top will of course be Nicholas Jackson. After scoring versus Leeds and Brentford, hopefully he can keep his scoring form up and bag us 1 or 2 in this one. This is what I'm expecting, but what would I personally change? Well, not much can change due to the mass amounts of injuries we have, but I think the main change I'd personally like to see is Mykhailo Mudryk being allowed to play in that central 10 role again, with Palmer retaining his place on the right instead. I think Misha was great in that role, and I want him to be getting consistent starts and consistent minutes, because we always see glimpses of brilliance from him, and he never seems to be in Poch's mind. Obviously, we could see rotation elsewhere if Poch wanted to freshen things up. Gusto, despite being excellent in recent games, could be rested, and if so, either of Trevor Chalobah or Alfie Gilchrist could come into play there. Likewise, if Cucurella isn't ready for a start, perhaps one of those two can come in if Gusto shifts to left back. I'd like to see Cassidy get some substantial minutes if possible, as well as an appearance for an unlikely player, youth product Tyreek George. Now George hasn't made an appearance for the senior team yet, but he may be set for a place on the bench in this one, as he didn't play for either the under-21s or under-18s this past week, so perhaps the tricky winger gets an opportunity after he's impressed massively for the youth team so far. So those are my lineups, and I'd like to hear from you guys too, so for today's question of the day, answer me this. Which youth player would you like to see get some minutes soon? Let me know in the comments down below with QOTD at the start as always, and I'll heart the ones that I like. Now I'm not going to talk too in depth about tactics here, as I've done that many times in the past. We've faced Newcastle twice already this season and once in pre-season, but if you want some more insight on that, then I suggest watching the previous fixtures' videos that will be linked down in the description. What I will do, however, is point out a few things of note. The elephant in the room is how poorly we played versus Newcastle in the reverse fixture. We got absolutely hammered 4-1 at St James's Park, and it was an embarrassing day out. If we are to get a result against the Magpies here, we'll need to improve on that performance. Firstly, our defending as a whole needs to improve, but especially from set pieces. In that fixture we were horrifically disorganised and almost never won the ball in the air. Men were left unmarked, we didn't close down quick enough from short routines, and they were gifted a goal because of it, and could have had more in truth. We made so many glaring, silly defensive mistakes, with Reece James getting sent off with a second yellow, Thiago Silva gifting Joelinton a goal, and allowing a 17-year-old Lewis Miley to completely run amok against us. We will have to be way sharper in this one, close down our men, and stay focused, because the amount of lapses of concentration we had was far too many. On the opposite ends of things, as I so often say on this channel, we have to be more clinical with the chances. Despite how poorly we played, we still had the chances to make the game interesting, and if 1 or 2 chances would have been converted, then maybe we could have gotten a result. This game is not at St James's Park, it's at home at Stamford Bridge. Newcastle have shown a vulnerability away from home, not only losing the majority of their games on the road with a 23% away win percentage, but conceding a massive 29 goals in those games. Only Sheffield United have conceded more than that this season. Without the roaring St James's Park crowd behind them, Newcastle are a shell of themselves, and we need to take advantage of that, especially considering their absentees. On the flip side, Chelsea have performed better at the Bridge than away from it, with a home win percentage of 41% as opposed to 35%. And of course, we beat Newcastle at the Bridge already this season, admittedly with a bit of good fortune and some brilliance from Georgi Petrovic. If we look at the stats of that game though, we thoroughly deserved to win and dominated Newcastle throughout. We can and should do the same here, and have to get some momentum back into our sails after poor results as of late have left a sour taste in the mouth of Blues fans, with the Stamford Bridge faithful starting to turn on Pochettino. He has a couple of really important games to try and grab back that faith, and it has to start here. For a score prediction, I'm going to be predicting another draw. Chelsea will be able to score against this shaky Newcastle defence on the road, but we failed to keep a clean sheet in 8 games in all comps, so I think that we'll concede a few too. Thus, I'm going to go for 2-2, with Jackson and Sterling getting goals for the Blues, and Isak and Gordon getting the goals for the Magpies. We'll have to wait until the game to see if any of my predictions are correct, and as always I'll be live streaming after the game to give my first reactions. But if you can't wait until then, maybe check one of these 2 videos on screen in the meantime. Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, in the rain or in the dry, keep that blue flag flying high. Come on you Blues!